There are certain moments in a company's journey when you realize the story is shifting, not through headlines or hype, but through focus. And this week, that shift became even clearer for Opendoor Technologies, ticker symbol OPEN. On October 26th, CEO Kaz Nejatian shared something fascinating on X. He wrote, "When I was at Shopify, we learned that we could underwrite loans and fund merchants better than anyone else by investing in building excellent models. Our models at Opendoor will be world-class. Machines are far better than humans at pricing things. We should let them." He also linked to a new Opendoor article that outlined how their valuation system uses over 500 data points to assess a home's value. That's not just an operational detail, it's a window into how Opendoor is redefining what it means to buy and sell real estate in the age of AI. Let's take a step back and unpack why this matters. When Opendoor was founded, the mission was bold but simple: to make buying and selling homes as easy as buying and selling cars. The company's model depended on one thing above all else: the ability to price homes accurately, buy them confidently, and then resell them efficiently. That's a data problem. It's not just about understanding the housing market, it's about understanding how thousands of variables interact: location, materials, renovations, neighborhood demand, seasonal patterns, even subtle regional price elasticity. And for years, that was the knock on Opendoor. Critics said, "You can't scale that kind of complexity. It's too human, too localized." But that's exactly what AI is built for. Kaz's post highlights something profound. Opendoor isn't trying to just survive this market cycle, it's trying to industrialize accuracy, to build a machine that can do what human realtors, appraisers, and even algorithms of the past never could: price risk at scale. The idea that machines are better at pricing things is both a statement of conviction and a direct response to those critics. It's saying, we're no longer guessing, we're measuring. Now, the number that jumps out here is 500. That's how many distinct data points Opendoor's valuation system now uses for each property. To put that into perspective, traditional appraisals usually consider fewer than 20 to 30 variables: square footage, number of bedrooms, recent comparables, and a few subjective adjustments. Opendoor system takes that baseline and adds layers of computer vision, geospatial analytics, market trend forecasting, historical volatility, and local buyer behavior patterns. Imagine an AI that not only knows what a house is worth today but also what it might be worth 3 months from now under different rate scenarios or demand conditions. That's where this is heading. Kaz's comment that machines are far better than humans at pricing things isn't bravado. It's the foundation of Opendoor's competitive moat. In real estate, small pricing errors compound quickly. Undervalue a home and you lose margin. Overvalue it and you lose liquidity. AI can process millions of market permutations per second, and as more homes move through the platform, those models get exponentially better. And that's something investors are starting to recognize. Over the past few weeks, we've seen renewed energy around the stock. Opendoor rallied 13% on Friday to close at $7.97 and added another 5 cents in the aftermarket. No single catalyst drove that move, but its clear confidence is returning. It's the combination of big investor entries, like Alfred taking a 210,000 share position, and ongoing macro improvement, better than expected housing data, dovish commentary from Jerome Powell, and the upcoming Fed decision on October 29th. You can feel the market slowly positioning for a rebound. But beneath all of that is the growing sense that Opendoor is executing. Kaz's post connects directly to the broader story investors have been hoping to see, that Opendoor isn't just cutting costs and waiting out the cycle, it's building the next generation of AI infrastructure for real estate. When he says their models will be world-class, it's not just talk. This is the same leader who helped build Shopify's credit underwriting systems, the same systems that successfully scaled billions in merchant loans while managing risk better than most banks. If that same philosophy is now being applied to housing, to an asset class measured in the trillions, then we're not just looking at a recovery story. We're looking at the early formation of a data-driven ecosystem that could define how homes are bought and sold in the future. Think about what that means for scalability. If Opendoor's AI can appraise homes faster and more accurately than anyone else, then the marginal cost of each new transaction goes down. That's where margin expansion happens. That's how Opendoor can compete even in slower housing environments. And here's the beauty of it: every transaction teaches the machine. Every home bought or sold becomes another data point in an ever smarter model. That's the kind of feedback loop companies like Tesla and Palantir thrive on, and it's now at the heart of Opendoor's evolution. Now, in terms of sentiment, Kaz's increasing activity on X has been a quiet but meaningful driver of confidence. He's been visible, witty, and clear. He posts about internal efficiency efforts, like cutting redundant SaaS contracts, but also about the company's purpose and technical direction. Investors appreciate that transparency, especially in a market where so many executives hide behind generic corporate language. Kaz is showing his hands-on, confident, and connected to both the product and the culture. That builds trust. It's also symbolic of a company entering a more confident phase, one where leadership wants to be visible again because there's progress to talk about. That's something you see at turning points in companies that are recovering from rough patches. So, what could this mean for next week? We're heading into one of the most important stretches of the year for this stock. We have the Federal Reserve's rate decision coming up on Tuesday, followed by Opendoor's earnings open house the following week. Those two events could set the tone for the next leg of the rally. If the Fed maintains a dovish tone, or even hints at further easing down the track, it will immediately lift housing-sensitive names like Opendoor. Lower long-term yields mean more affordability, more transactions, and less inventory lock-in. Combine that with improving sales data and a company that's been relentlessly focused on optimization, and you get a scenario where sentiment could flip quickly from cautious to opportunistic. Earnings, meanwhile, will be the big test. Investors will be looking for early signs that Kaz's changes, from team rebalancing to AI-driven systems, are showing up in metrics like gross margin, transaction count, and customer satisfaction. Even modest improvements could be viewed positively, given how low expectations have been. But perhaps the most important takeaway this weekend is that Opendoor finally has a story worth telling again. For much of the past year, the narrative was defensive, cost control, survival, stabilization. Now it's shifting to offense, machine learning, precision, and execution. And that's exactly what long-term investors want to see. There's also a psychological shift happening here. When Kaz says machines are better at pricing things, he's indirectly addressing the market's old skepticism, the idea that Opendoor's pricing models were flawed or inconsistent. He's saying, those days are over. We're not relying on gut feelings or static formulas. We're relying on a system that learns, adapts, and continuously improves. That's how Amazon optimized logistics. That's how Shopify optimized merchant lending. And now that's how Opendoor intends to optimize home buying. So as we head into the weekend, the message is clear. Opendoor's advantage isn't just in what it sells, it's in how it thinks. The company isn't waiting for the housing market to recover to succeed. It's building the tools that will allow it to thrive regardless of what the macro environment looks like. With the stock hovering just below $8, it's in a technically strong position heading into a catalyst-heavy fortnight. The floor around $7 has held firm for weeks, and every bounce has been met with higher conviction. That's how bases form before breakouts. So if you're watching this stock, pay attention to the next few sessions. If we see follow-through volume into the mid-$8s, the setup heading into earnings becomes incredibly interesting. But bigger picture, this is what conviction looks like in the early stages of a turnaround. You've got visible leadership, engaged investors, improving macro conditions, and a technology story that finally feels tangible. And whether or not next week's catalysts deliver immediate fireworks, the trend is starting to lean in Opendoor's favor. Momentum is returning. The story is maturing. And as Kaz said, if machines are better at pricing things, maybe it's time we let them.